people down, you great big people down. Let me put my arms about you. I could never live without you. Oh, you beautiful down, you great big people down. If you ever leave.
We are here this evening with Julie Dornback, who is the daughter of William Newby, who is one of the models who was in the original Quintanilla murals back 1940, 1941. She's here today to share her story of her father and his involvement with the murals. Julie, thank you for coming.
It's great to be here. I'm thrilled.
What did your father tell you about growing up in Kansas City during the Depression?
Growing up in Kansas City during the Depression, both of my parents grew up here. Mm-hmm. And the thing that they had in common was that both of their mothers passed away when they were young. My father's mother passed away from tuberculosis and left 4 children and a widower. So it was hard. They had some not so nice housekeepers. They talked about how they slept in a room that was open air. They called it a sleeping porch, and they slept there year round. And so it was very, very cold in the winter. So it's kind of harsh, you know. Their father was a secretary for a hardware company, and fortunately he did not lose his job. And then, as you know, they all 4 came here to University of Kansas City, which then later became UMKC.
Yeah. So did they all go to Paseo High School?
I believe so.
Right.
I believe so.
Okay. And why did they choose to come to University of Kansas City? Because it was the hometown close university?
I think because it was a practical decision. It was a very practical family.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so your father majored in chemistry?
He did.
Did he always have an interest in science?
I think he did. So.
So in 1940, he was asked by Louise Quintanilla to be a model for these murals. Did he tell you anything about that experience?
He did. He said he was just walking across campus, minding his own business, and he was approached. He didn't know anything about the mural project, but he was a very enthusiastic guy. He was thrilled, and he jumped right in.
So after Pearl Harbor, your father and his siblings all joined the service?
They sure did. They joined right up.
Yeah,
that was a point of family pride.
What was his military service like? What did he do?
He was a medic in the U.S. Army, and he was in the 12th Armored Division, and he drove a Jeep. And he was a little guy, kind of, you know, with a kind of a whimsical look to him, and everybody called him Jeep. That was his nickname. So, yeah, he was over there in the Battle of the Bulge in Europe. He, you know, right on the front lines. If you watch MASH, they get those buses that come into the MASH unit. He was on the front lines, 19 years old, loading people into those buses, really traumatic. And yet the most traumatic thing that he experienced was when they came across a chain gang of Holocaust prisoners who, it was right before the end of the war, and the Nazis had just let all these people go in chain gangs. And he said that they were, so he had enough medical training to know that they were all gonna die. And the 12th Armored Division gave them all of their supplies and all of their food, and then had to keep letting them go.
Wow.
So that was pretty intense for him.
When he got out of the service, he returned back to the university to finish his degree?
He came right back to the university.
And
he was 4 years older. And you know, all of a sudden, you know, they were keeping the fires warm on the home front. And then all the GIs came home and everything changed. And my mom was studying, as I said, she's 4 years younger. She also grew up in Kansas City. And she was studying chemistry here. And they had a lab together. And she was messing with her burette tube, which has a glass stopcock at the bottom, and you're supposed to have your science experiment in the tube, right? And she made a mistake, and the whole thing spilled out on the floor. And Dad is across the room. He's never met her. He's kind of a shy guy, but he saw his end, right? So he went diving across the room, got a clean shop towel, soaked the whole thing up, wrung it out into the burette tube again, and she ended up passing the lab. Then he asked her out on a date, and he was a short guy, and so she went out and bought one pair of flats to go on the date. She came home from the date, threw away all of her high heels, and got all the rest flats because she knew she was going to stay with this guy.
Stay with him.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Did your parents tell you anything about like student life at the time at the university? Like any of the traditions, like the campus pond or hobo day or anything like that?
I remember hearing about Hobo Day. I do. Tell me about Hobo Day.
So it started in 1935. Students, on a whim, came to campus dressed as hobos. And they put on skits at the afternoon lampooning the school's administration. Well, this became a yearly tradition. And it became a student holiday. Classes would be canceled the last Friday of April, and they would come all dressed in hobos, and they would have different song and skit contests. And the tradition was to lampoon the professors and the administration. They'd have like pie eating contests and beard growing contests, and they had a tug of war over the campus pond.
Yes,
that kind of thing.
So I'm sure I remember my dad talking about Hobo Day, and it sounded familiar to me when you mentioned that. And he's totally the guy that would have been involved with this because his thing, and I don't know if it was somewhat inspired by Quintanilla, but he liked to draw caricatures of people. And he also liked to make up little songs. And there was one song because they were studying chemistry. I don't know what that song is from the 40s, but they were studying butadiene, and it was, "Oh, you butadiene, you great big butadiene," but it was a takeoff from some love song from back then. So I think that was part of the Hobo Days thing too.
Oh, you beautiful dog, you great beautiful dog, let me put my arms about you. I could never live.
So after he graduated, what happened to him? What did he go on to do?
Well, he went to Northwestern and he got a PhD in organic chemistry, which blows my mind. Most of us can't even understand organic chemistry. Yeah. He was a very smart guy. And his brothers both went on to be metallurgists, and they worked for Armco Steel. Dad took a job with the DuPont company because he was a chemist, and moved to Wilmington, Delaware, and he raised us and lived the rest of his life in Wilmington, Delaware.
And then you'd sent me some photos of him where he had an interest in art later on in life. Where did that come from? Was it inspired by his experience? Or?
Maybe so, because I don't think he was really exposed to painting, as a child. And then he had this experience, and over the course of his adulthood, he started taking classes, and he got pretty good. He did a lot of sculpture.
And so did he come back to Kansas City and visit family here throughout the years?
Sure.
Would he come back and visit?
So his whole family was from Platte County, Missouri. And Mom's whole family was from Highland, Kansas. Okay. And so they had both grown up in Kansas City, but that's where all the extended relatives were. So, we would come back.
Yeah. So this is not the first time you visited the murals. You've been here to Kansas City before to see them.
Well, I visited the mural as an adult one time before, because usually when we came here, we weren't coming to Kansas City. We were either going to Highland or we were going to Platte County. Yeah.
So what do you think now, seeing this portrait of your dad frozen as a young man here on the wall as part of the university's history?
I totally love it. I mean, it's very whimsical, and it captures his personality. Yeah. It's funny that he has a deadpan look on his face because he was always smiling. Yeah. I imagine Quintanilla was like, "Stop smiling. I don't want to smile."
Yeah. It's funny because when we were trying to discover who the students were that were the original models, we were going through your books looking at pictures, and of course, we saw his picture, like, that's him. I mean, there was just no doubt about it. You didn't have to, look at more photos. You just knew automatically that was him, because Quintanilla really captured his essence.
Yeah, so. The eyebrows, he had incredible eyebrows.
Yeah. Well, thank you for coming and visiting with us and sharing your history of your father. Thank you for making his history part of the university's history.
Well, thank you, and I think it's terrific, this project you all are doing to not only restore the physical murals, but to do all this deep dive into the history behind them.
And our eventual goal is to help create interpretation for students and guests so they can walk into this space and know everything we've told you today. And so really have an understanding of what these murals mean and how they're an important part of the university's history, but also an important part of art history.
Right.
And it's been a hidden treasure here for 82 years, and we want to share it with the world now. So
Terrific.
thank you for helping us do that.
Thank you.
Beautiful dog is great, beautiful dog.